Federation friends. Welcome to Jewish Federation's virtual Mixology event. We are so glad to have you with us for a really fun evening. My name is Leah Matzel. I've been active as a volunteer with Federation for over 20 years. Maybe some of you recognize me. I'll be your moderator tonight for this fantastic program. We're going to learn a few perfect summer cocktails as we hear stories and culinary wisdom from our chefs. Over the last 12 weeks, Federation has sponsored several virtual events to keep us connected during this time. And tonight, we are so fortunate to have Jeffrey Yoskowitz and Liz Alpern from Gefilteria share their culinary expertise on Jewish flavors and mixology with us. Before I introduce them, I'd like to share with you a little bit about Federation, which is so close to my heart. As a longtime member of the Northern New Jersey community, I'm so proud of the work that our Federation is doing every day. During this unprecedented time, Federation has been assessing ongoing needs of our community, as well as raising funds and allocating resources in order to make sure that all emerging needs are being met. A great example of the resources and network that Federation has to keep our Jewish community strong came up about 2 weeks ago. Detox Kosher Deli found itself with 50 frozen meals to donate, left over from a simcha that was most unfortunately canceled due to the pandemic. They turned it into a mitzvah with the help of Federation. They called Federation, and we knew exactly where that donation could be best utilized. Meals were sent to JAD, a beautiful residential home for Jewish adults with developmental disabilities. I visited that facility myself. It is so lovely. The residents were just overjoyed to have a special Shabbat meal that Friday night. Federation has also raised an amazing over $400,000 so far to support COVID emergency relief in Northern New Jersey. So if you've already made a donation to Jewish Federation, we sincerely thank you. You are making a difference. And if you have not yet made a donation and would like to consider supporting our work, you can go to afnj.org, donate, and help us make a difference in our community. Now, let's turn to our program. To keep you, our audience, involved, we will be taking some of your questions, as many as we have time for. So if you take a moment, hover over the cursor of the bottom center of your Zoom screen, you'll see a feature called Q&A, and you can please type your questions there. And with that, I'd like to introduce our amazing chefs, Liz Alpern and Jeffrey Yoskowitz. They are co-owners of Gefilteria. They are bringing Ashkenazi cooking back with the mission of reimagining and revitalizing old world Jewish foods. Their culinary venture produces Jewish food experiences and cooking classes around the world. They're the co-authors of the widely acclaimed cookbook, The Gefilte Manifesto, and are always on the move, crisscrossing the country, teaching classes, giving lectures, hosting meals, and sharing their passion for this piece of the Jewish food renaissance. And we are going to jump right now to our chefs as they each come to us from their home kitchens. Hello, Liz and Jeffrey.
Hey, Leah, thanks for that introduction.
Hi, Leah, thank you.
That was a fun one. And yes, we are here live from our kitchen. So I'm Liz and here's Jeffrey. We're so excited to be here. And where is the here? Well, we're all creating a virtual space together, right? So you're in my home in Brooklyn, and you're in Jeffrey's home in Brooklyn, and you're in your home all at the same time. And so tonight we want to kick off our conversation, just so you know how we're going to do this. We're going to start off with a little bit of background about who we are and why we're so passionate about Ashkenazi cooking. And then we'll get into making drinks. So if you are planning to make some drinks along with us, now is a great moment to gather your items. And anything else we should tell them, Jeffrey, before we dive into the subject matter here?
I would say, you know, one of the nice things about making cocktails together is that this is a fun, casual opportunity for us to kind of be together and think of it as a happy hour. And I would say one of the things that... Oh, Liz.
Sorry. Trying to get the camera a little bit more.
You made it. Okay. One of the nice things about these virtual gatherings and all this is that we actually get to create, like Liz said, these spaces, and something about having l'chaim together symbolically feels really good. And I actually really relish having happy hours during this. Some people call them quarantini groups. That's sort of one of the language of the day. And I really appreciated that. So I'm really glad to be here with all of you. So thank you.
Great. So let's just talk about it. So Leah gave a great introduction to what we do, and by way of a little bit of background, Jeffrey and I, we were working in the food world together, separately and together, but we really came together because we had a shared passion for Ashkenazi food. And at the time, this is a decade ago, at the time that our business started, it really grew out of the fact that we looked around the culinary world to fellow chefs, to mixologists, and we didn't see anyone boasting or celebrating the flavors of the Ashkenazi kitchen.
And Liz, I'm going to interject here for a second and just say, when we say Ashkenazi, we're referring to the foods of Central and Eastern Europe. Now, think the Jewish deli, think on the holiday of Shavuot, eating blintzes and cheesecake, and
matzo ball soup.
There we go. Think about the holidays that for many, not all American Jews, a majority though, matzo ball soup and brisket might be on the Passover table, and these are kind of classic Ashkenazi Jewish foods. So I didn't mean to interrupt, Liz. I just wanted to.
No, that's great, and actually, I think that that's such a great point because we were in the culinary world as professionals, and we actually did see a lot of enthusiasm and excitement for other Jewish cuisines, right? We know that the Jewish world is a wide-ranging, diverse set of people from different backgrounds with different geographic pathways, right? We have Sephardic and Mizrahi cuisine, and those terms themselves are too overarching. There's so many very specific and amazing cuisines in the Jewish, global Jewish canon. So we'll be celebrating some of those tonight. But Jeffrey and I were Ashkenazi Jews, right? We grew up going to the Jewish delis. And when we looked around, we looked around the culinary world, we sort of saw, I'd almost say, disdain for these traditions that we loved. And part of why we loved them is because we had this tug at our heartstrings. We had this feeling like, wait a minute, these are the foods of our childhood. These are the foods that when we smell that chicken soup on a Friday, we know, wow, it's a holiday, it's Shabbat, right? And these foods meant so much to us. So to see them sort of disparaged or forgotten about felt tragic. And I would argue that there were two places that Ashkenazi cuisine sort of took its most dangerous dip, and that was number one in the kosher aisle of the supermarket, right? We all know that those box soups and powdered latkes are just not really what it's all about, And then simultaneously, of course, there was gefilte fish, right? And there is no food that really symbolizes how far Ashkenazi food had fallen than gefilte fish in the jar with synthetic gel. And so we, as chefs, as entrepreneurs, said, we're planting our flag. We're going to do something about it. And that's what started the Gefilteria, our business that we still have to this day.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. And I guess I'll say, a few years ago we wrote a cookbook together called the Gefilte Manifesto, and part of that book was an opportunity for us to kind of explore what the cuisine, as we were thinking about it and exploring it in our own work with the Gefilteria, what it, really how to break it down by flavor, how to break it down by different kinds of categories. And what we ended up doing was we ended up creating a beverage section in the back of the book. And we were really interested in adapting a lot of these classic foods, these traditional holiday foods, to the modern day. And so one of the things, living in Brooklyn, I'm sure in northern Jersey it's not too different, our friends were really interested in making cocktails. We had, we were really interested in exploring other beverage traditions of Eastern European origin, even just non-alcoholic drinks. But we started doing research and started experimenting and playing. And one of the associations that Liz talked about was that smell. And there were certain smells and sensory elements that are so connected to memory. And when I smell chicken soup, I think of Passover, right? So we were thinking of how to bring in different herbs and different smells and scents, and to honor a lot of our traditions while also providing something new flavors, new ways of engaging with the tradition. And that's what led us, in some ways, to start making cocktails that had, at first, Ashkenazi elements, and then we actually found that this was an amazing way to travel around the world, to celebrate other cultures as well, to fuse different flavor pairings. And the world of mixology and just the world of cocktails in general just sort of opened up to us a new frontier, something that maybe wasn't happening in the shtetls of Eastern Europe. I can tell you my grandmother, who was born in Poland, she left before she was really of drinking age, although back then, young children were drinking vodka. I happen to know. But we found this to be a kind of a new world approach to really exploring a lot of ideas in the cuisine from the old country.
Yeah, so that's really why we're here today, right? We know that there have been some cooking programs offered by the Federation, and we all love to cook, and hopefully you're all doing a lot of cooking these last 4 months. I'm sure you are. But I would imagine you're also doing some drinking as well. That is certainly something that we're seeing, hearing about people playing with flavors in their home bars or building out a home bar. So we wanted to think about our Jewish experiences and our cocktail experiences today. And there's lots that we can say. There's history. There's so much we want to explore. So I think we'll jump into the drinks, but we will take some moments of pause and see if there's any questions. So feel free to load up any questions in the Q&A that you have while we get started.
And actually, Liz, I just have a question for everyone that's here with us. I mean,
Yeah.
have you been making cocktails? Do you typically make cocktails at home, or is this something new that you're dabbling in? It's just helpful for us to get a sense of that. Or if you're like my household, is there not much drinking at all, and only on very special occasions? And just throw it in the chat. It'll just be helpful for us to kind of get a sense of, who you are. And Leah, maybe you can call out any fun or any exciting answers that might be relevant or might inform us for the session.
I can see the chat too, I think. So I got this one. Marnie shared that she has started experimenting with cocktails during the lockdown. We'd love to hear if there's any specific cocktail you've had great luck with, or bad luck maybe, as well. Okay, cool. New York Sour. I don't even know what that is. Sounds awesome. Great. So we've got a mix of experiences, it looks like, coming in. I can actually see that. But keep sharing with us, and any ideas that you have or anything that's been inspiring you, we'd love to hear about it. Okay, let's go on a trip. Let's go on a trip around the world right now, because we can't actually go on a trip around the world. What do you say, Jeffrey? You want to?
I am ready.
Okay, so first of all, hopefully you saw the equipment list. We're going to go from the easiest drink, the most simple drink, up to a more complex drink, just so you know. So we don't need this cocktail shaker yet. We don't need this muddler yet, but if you have one and you plan to make a drink, now's the time to get it ready. But we're going to start with what is one of the simplest cocktails you can do, which is a beer cocktail. And beer and wine cocktails are actually a wonderful way to drink without drinking as much liquor. So we find that. And they're often referred to as a long drink. And we wanted to make a beer cocktail specifically inspired by the Jewish community in Germany. Now, Jeffrey spent more time in contemporary Germany, so I will ask him to talk about that. But historically, Jews have actually been involved in and Jews in Germany were involved in the brewing community, in the brewing industry and trade. And certainly we know that beer is such a part of German identity in general. And also worth noting that Germany has one of the most thriving and growing Jewish communities today, and certainly in Europe, the largest growing Jewish community in Europe today. So Germany has so many associations for so many of us, but it also has some just absolutely incredible foundational Jewish history, both from a drinking perspective and not. And one of my favorite things to point out is that the original Ashkenaz, this land of this Ashkenazi culture, the Jews that moved to Poland, that moved east, originally were in northern Germany and in Germany and northern France. So you actually see a lot of German culture and a lot of German foods sort of sprinkled into the Ashkenazi culture that we know today.
Liz, one great example of that would be the bagel, which many people would say is a descendant of the pretzel. And if you ever made a pretzel or ever made a bagel, you know that it's basically a dough boiled in a very highly alkaline liquid and then baked. And you could actually make pretzels with bagel dough and vice versa, and so they're very similar. And so that's and the Jews of Poland are mostly associated with the bagel, but where did they come from? They came by way of Germany for the most part.
I love that. So we're making a beer cocktail, right? Now you could just drink a beer, but I've got my nice chilled pint glass, right? So when I'm drinking a beer, I want to drink it in a nice chilled glass. All I had to do was throw this glass into the freezer about 15 minutes ago, and it's nice and frosty. Can you see that? I hope you can. It feels great. I can't wait to pour a beer into it. Now I've got a pale ale that has some fruit, that has some mango. It's really effervescent. We said in the shopping list that you could use a saison, and a saison is a pretty big category, so you won't always see a beer labeled as a saison, right? It actually comes from, it just means the French word for season, and it sort of refers to this French style of farmhouse brewing where you would throw a little of this and throw a little of that. And so you don't have to use a saison, but what you want to do with this particular cocktail that we're making is you don't want something too hoppy or too bitter. So I didn't want anything that was going to be an IPA, for example. And I also wanted something a little fruity. I didn't want something like a Corona or a Stella, right? I wanted something with a little bit more fruit and a little bit more body. And so all this drink it's going to be 1 part beer that we'll pour in the glass and 1 part Dr. Brown's black cherry soda. It's not 1-to-1. It's 2 parts beer to 1 part Dr. Brown's black cherry soda. Sorry. Jeffrey, do you want to talk about black cherry soda for a second?
I guess, well, I'm curious how many of you go to the Jewish deli. I mean, I know there was Leah, you were talking about a Jewish deli in northern Jersey. I grew up in Somerset County, New Jersey, where there really weren't good delis, but I went to the school in Essex County where there was a good deli near me that had closed down. But so if you have deli associations, throw them in the chat. I love talking deli. I grew up going to Jewish delis, and the deli soda of the New York deli is Dr. Brown's. Black cherry is one of the, I'd say, 2 most iconic, unique sodas. There's Dr. Brown's Black Cherry and Dr. Brown's Celery, which is a celery soda, which if you have not had, is like the champagne of sodas. I was skeptical at first. When I had it with the pastrami sandwich, it's honestly a transcendent flavor pairing. Liz, what's next?
I am just pouring in my black cherry. That's all. I want you to keep talking because this color, I'm just slowly pouring it in. It looks beautiful.
Amazing.
Black cherry, that's this whole drink. That's the whole.
I saw someone say they only do Dr. Brown's cream soda. I used to only do cream soda, and I actually find it's very sweet and doesn't balance out the flavors of the fatty pastrami's and other things. The celery, which is more of a savory soda, is so wonderful, but so is the black cherry, and it's in Montreal. If anyone's gone to a Montreal-style deli, the main deli soda is only a black cherry flavor. And so this is a very unique deli soda. And so this beverage, this long drink, is our way of kind of fusing that very German-style cocktail with that deli story, the Jewish deli, which is actually Eastern European Jewish foods that kind of came together in a German delicatessen. Germans who opened these delicatessens in New York, and then eventually Eastern Europeans started filling them and creating their own. And so this is sort of the story of the Jewish Ashkenazi immigrant experience, this drink.
I love this drink. I want to say there is a great question from Michelle Goldstein in the Q&A that we can touch on, about how much flexibility is there in making cocktails, right? Is it like baking that, you have to get everything right, or is it approximate? And the only reason I I wanted to bring it up right now, and it's also a great natural lead into the cocktail you're going to do, Jeffrey, is that with a beer cocktail like this, all we did was very slowly pour the beer. We developed this nice foamy head on top. I introduced the Dr. Brown's Black Cherry. There's so much improvisation with something like this. A drink like this is all to taste, right? You can notice I didn't measure anything. So a drink like this is really, this is a summer, this is a refreshing drink, right? I only used about half the beer, so this is a perfect drink to share with somebody else when you open up one beer. And there's this is exactly the kind of drink where you don't need to follow everything exactly. You might the first time, but then you play, you improvise, you find out what you like. Some drinks are going to be a little bit more delicate, and we'll talk about that. They're really about balance. So I want to pause for 1 second and just say our first l'chaim of the night, l'chaim. I hope you're out there with a l'chaim as well. Oh, this is so good. And in the recipe packet that we provided you, there's another beer cocktail that uses a wheat beer, a Hefeweizen, sort of like white ale, and you mix that with fresh squeezed grapefruit juice. Incredibly refreshing, totally one of the best things to have during the day. Very light, will not be very alcoholic for you. I love it, and really flexible on the beer you can use. The fresh juice is so great. We just didn't think it was that interesting to watch 2 beer cocktails being made, so you can follow that one yourself. Jeffrey, you want to take us to the next cocktail?
I will. Thank you, Liz. And I don't have a black cherry soda right now, but I would love to have that long drink right now. So very nice. Okay, so I really like that question. And Michelle asked that question, right, about the flexibility. The cocktail I'm going to do is this kind of a foraged herb cocktail, but I like to think of it as just like I like the word foraging. You can use it metaphorically or literally. And so in preparation for right now, I actually foraged around in my fridge, and I just took a bunch of different things. I began making this cocktail. I would go up to this food conference on a farm, and I would go to the field and just start harvesting different herbs and different ingredients, and I would actually set up a station of all sorts of different ingredients, and I would, at this big food fest, I would just make a different drink for each different person with some basic proportions. And I think the important piece of this is if you have the basic ratios, what your foundation of what the drink is, then you can mix and match, especially with these kind of lighter, more summery flavors. And I think that's what's really exciting. So I'm going to make a pretty simple drink. I have here, and I'm not sure if you can see, I have some fruit that I could potentially throw, but I have some figs that were in my fridge. I have some strawberries. Cucumbers, believe it or not, really amazing. Actually, one of my favorite ingredients on the farm was these incredibly sweet cherry tomatoes, which I would mix into my drink, which added a certain acidity, which was actually so perfect. It was sweet and acidic that I needed a little bit of less lemon or lime that I added to it. And being able to be playful like that, it really gave me the opportunity to honor the season. So I am going to take my cocktail shaker, and unlike Liz, I have a Boston cocktail shaker, which means it has a glass and it has the shaker, and I'm going to kind of combine these like this as opposed to having a top the way Liz's has. So I'm going to take my shaker here, and I'm going to start with some herbs. So I have a few herbs here. I've got some mint. I actually grow mint right on my fire escape here in Brooklyn. I'm sure some of you have gardens that are a little bit nicer. I have some sage. This I did not grow. And I have some basil, also on my fire escape little herb garden. So this calls for a few sprigs of herbs. I'm going to mix these together. I'm going to make tonight a version I've never made before. I tend to be a bit more conservative and having 1 or 2 herbs. But I want to be playful tonight, and I'm going to take these, and these are all in some ways similar. There's parsley and there's dill on there, which have more savory flavor notes, but sage really, when I think of sage, I actually think of it very much as a food, maybe with the exception of a sage butter. I think of it as something that pairs really nice with sweets, like a sage tea, very Middle Eastern. Mint, I think of a mint tea. We're going to get to more of that later. I also And the basil can be quite savory, of course, but I actually love some of fruit pairings, basil and strawberry, for example. I actually think that they really accentuate each other. So I'm going to take these herbs, and I have a muddler here. And a muddler is just a term for a little baton that you basically break things down with.
It's like a stick, and what makes it distinct is that it has this flat bottom, and so it's good for crushing something at the bottom of a glass, whereas a spoon, you have a lot less surface area, right? So these are very inexpensive, so I always say that's a great investment in your bar.
Exactly. And so when you are going to muddle something like these herbs, I could take a muddler and do it now, but to be honest, on their own, I can bring out some of their oils and some of the flavors, but if I add a little bit of liquid in here to sort of break it down, I can muddle that together a little bit better. So this recipe calls for 3/4 of an ounce of lime or lemon juice, 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup. So simple syrup is quite easy to make. It's just sugar and water. I made some right here. And I have my jigger. This is the term for our measuring device. It has two sides, 1 ounce, 1/2 ounce. So I'm going to do, this calls for 3/4 of an ounce. Again, you can be loose. This is a good time for experimentation. I'll do, here we go, 1/2 ounce. I'll do a little bit more. I'm going to try to be as precise as possible just because some of you might be following along right now. And I'm just going to do some muddling with the simple syrup just to bring out the flavors. I don't want to over muddle. I don't want to make it too herby. I'm not going too hard. I'm just sort of releasing some of those flavors, some of those scents. And the nice thing about cocktails is that it is a very sensory experience. So I can just, I wish you could smell it too. I'm starting to get the smell of this mix of herbs coming through. And I'm going to skip the fruit for now, but if I were to add some fruit in, some fleshy fruit, like these figs or strawberries, I'd throw them in right now, and I'd do a muddle as well. I usually start with the herbs to bring out more of that herb flavor. The one thing you should know if you do add a fleshy fruit like a fig or a strawberry is that it's going to be a little bit of a thicker cocktail. It's going to have a bit more body to it. And it's something that might not be as refreshing for you, even if the flavor itself is refreshing. Another thing I have here is a cucumber. And Liz and I actually have a recipe in our cookbook for a celery collins with celery, our own version of a celery syrup and cucumbers, which are actually so wonderful when they're mixed with sweetness and everything. And I'm not going to add that right now, but I just wanted to show you how you can forage around in your own refrigerator for all sorts of different ingredients. Now the next thing that this recipe calls for is some citrus, lemon or lime juice. Again, it calls for 3/4 of an ounce. Again, you can just squeeze, a lemon. I'm going to squeeze some lemon in. So that was already a mostly squeezed out lemon. I just had a little bit left. Didn't want it to go to waste. So I have here about 1/2 ounce. I'm going to do another 1/2 of a lemon. And I'll just show you this lemon. I actually, using a peeler, I usually peel off the skin of the lemon because I know that I can use this for garnish later. So I did that earlier. So before I slice into this, I might just take another peel or two off.
I love it. That's so smart. So you're ready no matter what. You've got your lemon peels. You're ready to go.
You don't want to waste lemon peel. There's a lot of flavor there. It's like the #1 bartender, garnish, lemon or lime. Okay, so we're going to do another 1/2 here. So great. So I'm about 3/4 of an ounce. And when you're making a cocktail that includes sugar or syrup, having the citrus to balance it out, to round out those flavors, you don't want an overly saccharine cocktail. Too sweet, it's not refreshing. That citrus, that acid is going to cut that. It's going to make it incredibly refreshing. So now we have herbs, syrup, and our citrus. Okay, now the next thing is, this recipe calls for you can use either gin or vodka, 1/2 of an ounce of gin or vodka. So Liz, what do you think? I got a potato vodka and I got some gin. What are you feeling here?
I think you should use gin because I'm going to use vodka in my cocktail.
Right.
But I wanted to say that this whole formula works really well without alcohol at all. So anybody who doesn't drink or doesn't want to drink or wants to make a fun drink for kids or something like that, muddling herbs with some citrus and a little bit of syrup and a little bit of soda water. It's a great drink. You do not need any alcohol to make it taste so good without alcohol. And I think that's just a really important thing. And I wanted to go back to Michelle's question about how precise you need to be. You know, you were talking about how balanced everything needs to be. So it's not that everything needs to be perfect like in baking, but you do still want to achieve, no matter what, some sort of a balance. You don't want something too sour, too sweet, too alcoholic, right? So I think of cocktails a little bit more like with ratios than with a recipe, right?
And if you think about it this way, it's 1.5 ounce of alcohol and 3/4 of an ounce of citrus, 3/4 of an ounce of sugar. So it's 1 part sweet, 1 part sour, 2 parts alcohol, if you want to do ratios, as you're just talking about. So that's what we have right here. And I'm just going to throw in a few ice cubes. And you'll experiment. You might find that you like yours a bit more boozy, more alcohol, and you might want a little bit less. And so I'm going to do the fun part. I'm going to shake. And while I shake, one of the things I'm feeling for is my shaker. I want to feel it cold through. I want my hand to really feel like it's hard to hold on to it because it's so cold. And this is a great way of chilling your, are you able to hear me, Liz?
Yeah, perfect. Great.
It's a great way of chilling your drink without it getting watery. That's why we do it this way.
It's also fun. Let's just say it's really fun to shake a cocktail.
Agreed. And if you have the Boston shaker, you've got to loosen yours up. And I got one of these guys. And I'm going to strain my drink. But first, because it's a summery cocktail, I'm going to have some ice cubes in my drink. I got a small glass. When I'm making cocktails at home and I'm experimenting, I always like to make a small drink. I want to make a few different versions of it. I want to see, I want to tinker, I want to play. So I'm going to make a drink now. While Liz is making hers, I'll probably make another one. And I'm going to add some fruit and experiment a little bit as well. So I'm going to take my shaker. And I'm going to pour. Beautiful. I'm going to leave a little bit of space. There's a little bit more in there. I'm going to give it a taste before I finish it off. That's nice, that's refreshing. I'm going to do a splash of seltzer for a little fizz. I don't have my stirrer on me, but I have a little long spoon. Just give it a little stir. And I have a really nice summery cocktail. It's very much like a Collins. Now I can garnish, and you have a choice. You can, I think a garnish is really important. Got a little, you can do a little lemon wheel if you want, if that's the direction you want to go. Nice summery outdoor cocktail. You could take some of your citrus peel, and if you are going to use the citrus peel, there's actually lots of amazing oils on the peel, and you want to rub it around the rim of your glass. And just you can throw your peel in, so it'll look a little bit like this, just kind of floating in there. And you can take a little strip of your lemon peel, and you can just twist it up.
Nice.
And throw the twist in. And the twist is sweet, it's cute. You can't really see it as well, I know in the camera, I can't turn it fully. The other option is, and one thing I really do love, is to use the herbs themselves. And it depends on what you want to accentuate. So instead of all that lemon, or with the lemon, I could just throw in a little bit of sage. That's I think the one that will stand up the most. My basil's looking a bit wilty right now. I'm just going to throw that in there, and I have like a nice, very simple, very modest summer drink.
It looks great. Leah, do you want to chime in with any questions before we move into the next one? L'chaim, Jeffrey, that looks great.
Hi.
I forgot to say l'chaim, l'chaim.
Hi. I did have a question that came in on the chat. Someone, Melinda asked, is it acceptable to use the simple syrup that you can find at the supermarket rather than making it yourself? How do you feel about that?
Of course. You can definitely buy one. There's actually some cocktail brands that sell flavored simple syrups. You can make those easily yourself. Just heat up sugar and water and then throw in whatever you want to flavor it with, throw in chilies and make a chili simple syrup. But you can buy those, and they make life easier. Some of them have limited shelf lives depending on what is mixed in with the syrup, and so you might need to refrigerate them, or you might need to use it, within a couple of months. So just something to keep in mind. When in doubt, you can always make your own in a pinch, and so it's just a good thing to keep in your back pocket.
This is more of a fun kind of general question. Why do they always say that Jews don't drink? You go to a simcha and it's all about food, and as if alcohol doesn't really count. I know traditionally a l'chaim is a very important thing. So, any thoughts about why Jews supposedly don't drink?
What do you mean Jews don't drink? My parents always drank white Zinfandel and peach schnapps.
Good stuff.
It's so true. It's so true.
Liz, you got a thought?
I mean, there's so many thoughts. The shorter answer is that it's just not true, right? So there's a perception of that sort of entered the popular imagination. Obviously, it's grounded in some cultural truth around Ashkenazi Jews, but maybe of a certain generation, right? Certainly, my grandfather never drank. Lots of other people never drank. In my life, I didn't grow up with a liquor cabinet that was very full. But I don't think that, and there's theories behind why that might be true. But the reality is that Jews have been involved in alcohol and the business, the trade, and the drinking of forever. Let's think about what do we do to begin every holiday? Well, we bless wine, right? This is a huge part of what we do. Is that alcohol is part of our ritual life, and it is certainly part of our culture. And it's
Well, Liz, is Manischewitz really wine?
So sweet. I'm wondering a little bit about that.
I knew Manischewitz was going to come up. My parents in Long Island grow Concord grapes, and every year I threaten to turn them into Manischewitz wine, which is very sweetened wine. But we are going to get to a Moroccan cocktail next, and I want to say that Morocco, a country that for a long time was dominated by Muslims who actively do not drink. Jews, even there, were very involved in distilleries, and so there's a very long and very unending continuum of Jews involved in the liquor trade and distillation and bar owning throughout history. So I think that association that we have of Jews not drinking is a little bit more about a certain generation and a certain type of Ashkenazi Jew.
And Liz, this is a great question. I'd love to find out from people. Did you grow up in a family that really drinking wasn't a part of the custom? Was it something that did? Your family did do, but maybe your friends didn't. If you grew up in a Jewish community. I'll just add one other little piece of historical context, which is, and everything you said, Liz, I really loved, and of course, there is that these associations. To bring it back to Poland, to bring it back to Eastern Europe, the Ashkenazi story. Jews weren't often landowners, but they often lived in towns with these wealthy landowners, and in the 18th, 19th century, these landowners, when there was certain grain shortages and things like that, it actually turned out to be, for these landowners to actually distill and make their own alcohols, it actually made more money for them than to sell their grains or on the open market. And so they created a bunch of taverns on the property, and they usually brought the Jews in, or Jewish tavern keepers. And in fact, today in Poland, there's still these caricatures of Jewish tavern keepers, and you can buy all sorts of vodka branded with Jewish faces, Tevye vodka, there's a few others as well. And the association with among the landowners was that Jews don't drink and they're responsible, whereas the peasants were not responsible. So there's actually this sordid history where the Jews were the tavern keepers and they were actually regulating the distribution of alcohol to the peasants, which was also connected to some of the anti-Semitism that came from the peasants, because they became the middlemen. And whether or not Jews did or did not drink, they, in many cases, did. that association led them into this role of being in the alcohol business, being middlemen, and that association, and that in some ways that misconception that Jews don't drink carried over and carried into the New World. I would say my family did drink. They just didn't drink the best alcohol, and we didn't have a cocktail culture at home. But I mean, I would say revelrous holiday celebrating with wine and the Chayims like that. Surely that was a part of our family story.
And there's a great conversation going on in the chat about Sephardic Jews, and Sephardic Jews not really drinking Manischewitz. That's a very, Ashkenazi drink, right? It's associated with that sort of Borscht Belt, Ashkenazi, upstate New York culture, right, where Concord grapes are grown. But Sephardic Jews have an entire other culture and lots of amazing alcohols associated with that culture. And that's in the chat right now if anybody wants to check it out. And I will say that when I've lived in France and I've lived in Montreal, and in both of those places, I certainly drank beautiful wines, kosher wines, wonderful cocktails. Those are both places where Sephardic Jews have a very strong presence. And so French wines are part of the culture.
Right.
So we're going to graduate to our third drink. We still have time to chat, but I think we want to move into the next drink right now, which is, like I alluded to before, we're making a cocktail inspired by Moroccan mint tea. Now, the reason we're graduating to this cocktail is because it required a little bit of advanced planning. So Jeffrey alluded to making simple syrup, as simple as mixing 1 part sugar and 1 part boiling water. Let it cool, and there you go, right? You stir the sugar till it gets dissolved. But we made what's called an infusion. And so what I did was I mixed my sugar and my boiling water, and then I also put in green tea bags, right? And I also put in some fresh mint leaves from my garden right outside. So when I stick my nose in here right now, I feel like I am smelling mint tea, sweet mint tea. And I can recall many times being in Moroccan homes being served beautiful sweet mint tea. And so that's what's going on here. And this syrup was the simplest thing to make. All I had to do was heat up the water, mix it with the sugar, and throw the stuff in. It's been sitting here for a while now, so you can see all the ingredients. You could also use just mint tea if you wanted to, but I find that making green tea syrup with the fresh mint leaves is better. But of course, I want to strain this out. So I did this a couple hours ago. It's definitely very flavorful. You really just want to give yourself enough time to let it cool. And I'm going to strain this now. So I have something more complex than is necessary, but I've got a little mesh strainer here. And I'm going to strain this syrup into another jar. All right. So now I'll show you what it looks like.
Liz, while you're doing that, I just want to quickly say that we actually created this cocktail in partnership with the Joint Distribution Committee.
Yes.
Who does a lot of work in Morocco, and they were interested in creating a cocktail that celebrated the Moroccan Jewish story, and we loved the idea. And based on sort of our telling of the Ashkenazi story through cocktails, we actually were really interested in expanding our view and telling the story of a really powerful, at times influential, and really important Jewish community in Morocco.
I love it. Yes. And so, of course, in this cocktail, we are going to use, again, we're going to use our cocktail shaker. And I've got this fresh mint. Again, I just picked it from my garden. And we're going to do something very similar to what Jeffrey did, right? We're going to take some of these leaves, and we're going to put them in our bottom of our shaker. Fresh mint, nothing smells better than fresh mint, am I right? I mean, it's so great. So I'm just going to pull off some of these stems. Of course, you can use fresh mint from the store. And then that's where I'm going to mix in some of this green tea simple syrup. And this particular drink is 1.5 ounces of mint tea syrup, but you can, make it as big as small as you want. Again, I've got my jigger here. So here we go. All right, so I've got 1 ounce. about a half an ounce. I've got little lines on the inside of this fizzy. Now I'm gonna muddle this, but there's one more ingredient that I want to put in here. Because I want a little bit of lemon. Remember, we really love citrus in cocktails. So in here, in addition to my mint and my syrup, I've got a little bit of lemon peel, just like Jeffrey had, and I'm actually gonna muddle this right in here. I always think muddling, the key thing is that we want to use the wrist, right? I don't want to poke it up and down. I want to use my wrist. All right, now I can smell already coming out of here. I've got lemon. I've got mint tea. I've got mint leaves. I mean, this is so beautiful. The smell is enough. I mean, you really don't need any liquor with this drink. It's so aromatic. This is a drink on the sweeter side, but again, we're really honoring this legend, this history of Moroccan mint tea that is often served a little bit sweet. So I've crushed up my, you can't really see because I've got my syrup in there, but I've crushed that up, and now I'm going to add a little bit of vodka in here. Okay, so I've got some standard Tito's vodka. Often we get questions like, you know, what brand of what do you like? And I think there's so many great brands and lots of great craft brands out there, but Tito's is a vodka company that is made in the United States, but just has become a very popular brand. It's a really simple vodka.
Yes, it's worth noting that Tito's is an American grain vodka versus what I have is a Polish potato vodka.
Potato vodka, yes, I love that distinction. Thank you for doing that. Yes, so that's a great point. That's a great point. America versus Poland. Here we go.
And the potato vodka, some say is more full-bodied in flavor, and there are some who say that the #1 vodka is a rye vodka.
Wow. And I know that I drink potato vodka on Passover, so that's the time that I think about potato vodka. So in my glass now, remember in this muddler, just as a summary, I've got my mint leaves muddled up with my green tea mint syrup. And I've also gotten some vodka in here, some lemon peel. Now I'm going to drop in my ice. And what I always like to do is have my glass ready, even before I drop in the ice usually. And I'm going to use a little sprig of mint on the side of my glass. Okay. So shake it up. All right. So the ideal glass to use for this might be a tea glass, right? If you think about it, sort of that reference to the mint tea. But I don't have it. You know what? I actually have a really cute small glass I want to use. Hold on. Hold that thought.
Liz, while you're getting that glass, I just made the same cocktail that I had made earlier, but I threw in some strawberry and fig. And I just made it.
Gorgeous.
You can see that color. It's a little bit thicker. You can see my garnish on there. But it's a really versatile drink, and it's really so summery, so refreshing with the fresh fruit in there.
So refreshing. I love it.
Actually, and I threw a cucumber slice in too.
Nice. And so now I'm going to rub the rim here with this lemon peel. I've got my mint sprig right here. So with that, I say l'chaim again. L'chaim, Jeffrey.
L'chaim.
You can top this with a little bit of optional, couple options you have. You can top it with a little bit of soda water if you want this Moroccan drink. Mine is quite effervescent already. I don't really feel like I need it, but I am going to throw just a splash of bitters in. Round out the flavor just a drop. I saw somebody in the chat had gotten these Angostura bitters, which are just a great way to add flavor, even just to soda water.
I just wanted to make mention, my friend Bridget, who was talking about Sephardic, she's also Moroccan. Tradition with that region also tends to be a lot of licorice-based flavors. They use like a rock, I believe I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but all across the Middle East, you get that licorice-flavored alcohol.
Totally.
I'm a Greek Jew, and we had the licorice-flavored. I forgot what it's called. Is it ouzo? No, but
There's arak. There's ouzo is the Greek version. Arak is the more Middle Eastern version. There's reiki, which is the Turkish. I love that's one of my favorite flavors for sure. And it's actually not something that's foreign from the European palate as well, or for the European cocktails. And Swedish aquavit has elements of that licorice flavor too. And it's interesting though, but there's a particular way in those araks and ouzos that it's in the hot summer. There's nothing more refreshing than arak, that licorice flavor mixed with grapefruit, and a cocktail that incorporates those two elements. For sure. And you know what's interesting is there in Moroccan tradition there's actually very famously a fig liqueur that is distilled from figs and other very aromatic liqueurs. And of course the Jewish community, you know, they weren't Muslim, they were living in Muslim land, but only until recently have the laws been restrictive, preventing the distillation of alcohol. And so the Jewish community used local ingredients to produce some exceptional, flavorful liquors. And actually in the New York area, there is a distillery that, Liz, what's the name of it? It's in French.
The distillery, I don't know, but the name of the liquor is called Mahia.
Yeah, the drink's Mahia, but there's a local distillery in New York, upstate New York, that's making the Mahia fig liqueur, this Moroccan liqueur, so I just really appreciate that that piece of the history, that piece of the story.
So, so we're just about out of time. I wanted to say one more note because so much of our excitement and passion about cooking Ashkenazi cuisine, the particular cuisine of our background, is that sort of resourcefulness, is using what's in your kitchen, is thinking about what's there and how can I use it. And what we hope is that the cocktails we did tonight sort of tell the story of drinks that aren't so precious or so particular, right? We used ingredients we had. They had a lot of flexibility, and we really try and take that mindset of what can you use, what's in your kitchen, what herbs do you have growing on your windowsill, and how can you turn that into something fun? Just like you would with cooking when you want to put a dish together, how can you sort of translate that into, you know, what puts a, you know, what into a drink. So just really thinking about that as an inspiration in your bar, in your drinks, whatever you're doing, whether you're drinking alcohol or not, what do you have and how can you use it? It's just such a wonderful way of thinking about your kitchen and your pantry and your refrigerator and all of that. So just really wanted to drive that point home as our teaching. And I don't know.
Liz, I would also just add to that, it's also what story do you want to tell? So, you know, a great example would be if you, you know, you want to honor the Jewish deli, you want to tell the story and you want to incorporate a deli soda, or you want to celebrate the flavor of a pickle, you know, and you can actually make an amazing cocktail using pickle brine. You can make a dirty martini instead of olive brine, use pickle brine with dry vermouth and with vodka or gin. And it's a fantastic drink, and you can garnish it with pickles, and that can be its own way of telling a particular story. Or you want to tell the story of Moroccan Jews or German Jews or Jews of Turkey, and you can start with basic ingredients, basic liqueurs that are very common and prevalent there, and you can start to weave together a narrative. And that's what I really love about cocktails in general, is that it's a vehicle for storytelling through sensory elements, through smells, through flavors, through the combination of those.
Love it. Is there any final questions you want to bring in, or any?
Yeah, I just, you know, some people really haven't been creating cocktails until very recently, so maybe they could use some advice. What would you recommend as some basic equipment for a home bar? What do you feel like the most important items might be?
For me, the most important thing to have in your bar is some sort of a measuring jigger, some sort of a device, because that has ounces. And so you can get one of these that has both milliliters and ounces on it. I also have a little glass liquid measuring cup that I love because you can see what's in it. And I feel like you can get a little bit more of a precise measure. It's really fun to use a glass one. I don't know where that is right now. I actually had two, and one of them has been gone this entire quarantine. So I'm sure I'll find it, buried in the backyard one day or something. But I think a jigger is key, because if you want to follow any recipes online, it's going to be in ounces and not in tablespoons, not in cups, not in anything. So to me, that's the most important thing. And I also think a muddler is great because I think that it really opens up a world of different ingredients you can use. I love a shaker, but I think as Jeffrey showed us, you don't need a shaker.
Yeah, well, actually, what I have is a shaker. It's just a different type.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and I would say a shaker is a worthwhile investment, but you actually don't even need one. You can just get a top to add to a mason jar. There's a few different brands that are, if you go to Amazon or you go online, you can find these mason jar lids that create a shaker really easily with one little add-on. For me, I just think, I don't like to have too much liquor all at once. I have limited space in my Brooklyn apartment, but I like to have good stuff when I can get it. But you don't need the fanciest if you're making a cocktail. You don't need to have the Grey Goose vodka. I have this potato vodka, which is like a really good foundation for a nice cocktail. A decent gin. Again, you don't need the fanciest gin if you're going to be mixing it. Like, the idea of mixing it is we're bringing in those aromatics with our own flavors. So, but just having, for me, it's like in the summer, I don't want rye, I don't want whiskey, I don't want those heavier, weightier liquors. I want the kind of lighter ones, the clearer, the gins, the vodkas. I don't do that much with rum. I'm sure some people do, and that's wonderful and great. For me, having bitters, it is nice, not necessary. But generally speaking, just having citrus on hand, having lemons and limes, sugar, and some kind of alcohol is an amazing combination. And there is the basis of a Collins cocktail, right? That is all that you need to kind of get started, and you can play and build from there.
Can't live without that tool, the lemon juicer. That is something I use almost every day for one reason or another.
Yep, that was the other thing that I was thinking about. If we are going to have a lot of, citrus in our lives, let's have the right tool to squeeze it.
Beautiful. Well, that concludes our program this evening. And Liz and Jeff, thank you so much for this presentation. It was really super. We're really grateful for your time. And it's absolutely perfect for the holiday weekend, some of these different things that we can try out on our own. Your knowledge and enthusiasm are really inspiring to everyone watching. And for our participants, please check out their website, thefilteria.com. We so thank you for your participation tonight. Appreciate everyone listening in and staying active with the Federation. And we really hope to gather together in person sometime soon. And we just want to say good night to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you. Have a wonderful night.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.